Hare Krsna. So today is the birthday, the appearance day of His Holiness Bhakti Prabhav Swami. Bhakti Prabhav Swami ki. Bhakti Prabhav Swami ki. Bhakti Prabhav Swami ki. Happy birthday, Maharaj. So please have a seat. I would like to introduce His Holiness Krishna Ksetra Maharaj to all of you. Probably many of you know Maharaj, but still Ramananda Roy Prabhu reminded me that it's a nice culture to introduce senior speakers so that we are all mentally prepared listening to the kata of the speaker. So please have a seat. So His Holiness Krishna Ksetra Maharaj, please, if everybody can pay attention. His Holiness Krishna Ksetra Maharaj, teacher, writer and traveler, is a disciple of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He has served as a missionary, temple priest, pujari and counselor for Bhakti Yoga practitioners from the time of his formal initiation in 1972. From 1972 to 1976 he was based in Germany, the Netherlands and Denmark. That I didn't know. Yes, that I know, but Denmark I didn't know. And then he began to participate in Vaishnav missionary activities in Central Europe almost every year from 1978 to 1995. He visited India on pilgrimage. In 1995, as coordinator of a research group, he compiled and published Pancharatra Pradipa in 2 volumes, a manual for Chaitanya Vaishnava temple worship. He also served ISKCON as GBC as the minister for deity worship from then until 2005. In 2004, after 8 years of university study, he received a PhD degree from the University of Oxford for his dissertation on Chaitanya Vaishnava image worship, now available from Routledge publisher as Attending Krishna's Image. Chaitanya Vaishnava Murti Seva as Devotional Truth, as a book in the Routledge Hindu Studies series. Krishna Ksetra Swami is now a research fellow of the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies. He also teaches at Bhaktivedanta College in Radhadesh since 2002. Certain things are outdated a little bit. He recently taught survey courses in Indian religions and Asian religions in the religion department at the University of Florida, Gainesville. Beginning in September 2007, he began teaching at Chinese University of Hong Kong courses in Indian religion and culture. After a full year of teaching, he then continued to teach 1 semester per year for the next 4 years. Since then, he has been giving lectures at several universities in the People's Republic of China. Amidst academic work, he also travels extensively, teaching about spiritual life as comprehended in the Vaishnava devotional tradition coming from Sri Chaitanya. These are the countries in which he has studied, taught, counseled and participated in spiritual community building. Argentina, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Bosnia, Brazil, Bulgaria, Chile, China, Croatia, Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, and so many other countries. And currently, Maharaj is here to facilitate, one of the facilitators of the Agricultural and Cow Protection Self-Sufficiency Conference here in Radhadesh. Maharaj will be giving the class today, which is very obvious. Please.
He's also the Cow Protection and Agriculture Minister since 2019, is that right? for Europe.
You are yourself, you are a global one, no?
Well, I'm just a servant of all the others.
So I hope everyone is very happy with the presence of His Holiness Krishna Ksetra Maharaj here in Radhadesh. Hari Bol! And Maharaj will also be giving class on Friday. Hare Krishna. I missed a lot of points.
That was quite enough. Quite
No time for the class otherwise.
Quite enough. Maybe. Hare Krishna. So thank you for your kind introduction, and yeah, I'm always happy to be here. Back home, back to Radhadesh, right? Okay, let's sing. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, 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 Dora Haribo. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamahya Dadati Swavadantikam Mandeham Shri Guru Paradamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavascha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vidantam Sajivan Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Nami Namaste Saraswate Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadesha Sarine Mancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabham Sute Pranamami Hare Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Do we have a Bhagavatam book? No, you could read this here. You could, this maybe. Yeah. So, this morning we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 71. The Lord's travels to Indraprastha, and we're reading verse number 13. We have it written here. Yes, okay. We can chant together, shall we? Yes. Nirgamaya Varudhansvan. Nirgamaya Varudhansvan. Sasutan Saparichadan. Sasutan Saparichadan. Sankarshanam Anunyapya. Sankarshanam Manujñapya. Yadurajam cha Shatruhan. Yadurajam cha Shatruhan. Sutopanitam Svaratam. Sutopanitam Svaratam. Aruhat Garudadvacham. Aruhat Garudadvacham. Now let's try it all together. Nirgamaya Varudhansvan. Sasutam Saparichadam. Sankarshanam Anunyapya. Yadurajam Shashatruham. Sutopanitam Swapratam. Aruhat Garudadvacham. Very good. Now we know the verse. We have it memorized. Yes. Okay, what does it mean? Nirgamaya. Making go. Avarodhan. Wives. Swan. His. Son. With. Sutan. Their sons. Sa. With. Parichadan, their baggage. Sankarshanam, Lord Balaram. Anugnyapya, taking leave of. Yadurajam, the king of the Yadus Ugrasena. Cha, and Shatruhan, O killer of enemies. Parikshit. Suta, by his driver. Upanitam, brought. Sva, his. Ratam, chariot. Aruhat, he mounted. Garuda, of Garuda, Dvajam, whose flag. Translation and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: O slayer of enemies, after he had arranged for the departure of his wives, children, and baggage, and taken leave of Lord Sankarshan and King Ugrasen, Lord Krishna mounted his chariot, which had been brought by his driver. It flew a flag marked with the emblem of Garuda. Purport: having accepted Uddhava's proposal, Lord Krishna first proceeded with his wives, family, and entourage to the royal city of Indraprastha, the capital of the Pandavas. The rest of this chapter describes Lord Krishna's journey to that city and how he was received there by his loving devotees. In Indraprastha, Lord Krishna explained to the Pandavas his plan to first kill Jarasandha and then perform the Rajasuya sacrifice, and with their full agreement, he proceeded with Bhimasena to settle accounts with the wicked king. Settle accounts. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Lord Krishna's wives had also been invited to the Rajasuya sacrifice and were eager to go. The description of the colorful royal procession begins with the following verse. Mukam karati vachalam bhangum langayate yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Guru Dinataranam. I'm trying to imagine this scene. How many wives does Lord Krishna have in Dwarka? 16,000, 16,108, 16,008, something like that. A lot of wives. This was one thing that my students in Hong Kong remembered when I spoke on Krishna's pastimes. I told them one day Krishna had 16,000 wives. Right, okay. And they remembered that. They didn't remember a whole lot more, but they remembered that. But it says here that the wives and Avarodhan, the wives, and their sons. How many sons did each of the wives have? 10 times 16,000 equals? A lot. 160,000. So 160,000 plus 16,000. And they're all on their way. They're all coming on one chariot? I don't think so. And they're all going to be accommodated in Indraprastha. Interesting. And they're all going to get fed. Okay. Why not? Everything is possible for Krishna. This is a kind of transition verse. It's, as is explained in the purport, the rest of the chapter is going to be describing this travel and arrival at Indraprastha. Now Krishna has received anugyapya, having received permission, literally. The translators have said anugyapya means taking leave of. So anyway, it's permission. Permission from who? From? Sankarshan and Ugrasena, yes. And in the previous verse, it also says Anugyapya, taking permission from Gurun, from his superiors. So of course, this is a nice principle of etiquette, not just Vaishnava etiquette, but etiquette in general, that if you're going somewhere, you take permission from your seniors. When I was at Gita Nagari this last October for about 3 weeks. It was very, very nice. And the presiding deities there, do you know who they are? Radha Damodar, famous deities. And the devotees told me 2 or 3 or 4 times, they kind of warned me. They said, you must take permission from the deities before you leave, because if you don't, you will find that you will have trouble. Or you may find that you are coming back before you were planning. So I was very careful to take their permission before leaving. Okay, the chapter as a whole, we can say, is a preparation for what is explained here in the purport, that there's a plan to come to Indraprastha in order to do what? To settle accounts with with Jarasandha, with whom Krishna has had some interactions, to put it neutrally, several times. Jarasandha has come and attacked how many times? 17 times? 18 times? A lot of times. And so they've been fighting, and so this plan has now come. Uddhava has suggested, and Krishna has agreed. This is a very nice plan. Let's do it. Now, this could raise a question for us, and that is, he's planning to, well, we could say from a perspective of wartime condition, that he can be justified in killing Jarasandha. Whether by the method that he's doing would be ethically justified might be debated. And we might also consider what is the motivation, and we might consider the bigger picture of what is happening. And of course, we want to always take into account who is making this plan, none other than Lord Krishna. I've been studying something about present day and earlier articulation of the subject of ethics. And I'm doing this because I'm writing a book on ethics, animal ethics specifically, yoga and animal ethics. And it has me thinking a lot about philosophy, ethics philosophy. And what I thought we can do now, if we can project on the screen now, is if you'll indulge me. Huh? Yes. Well, if Harmonia and G won't mind. Yeah. So in this context of what Krishna is planning to do, I see. Yes. Oh, this is very nice. Okay. I thought we can discuss the ethics of compassion. We might want to say from the get-go that Krishna's purpose has something to do with compassion. But there are questions about the ethics of compassion, and I'm going to draw from a particular writer on this subject who begins one of the chapters of his book, Compassion and Moral Guidance, one professor, Steve Bain. He starts a later chapter of this book, Compassion and Moral Guidance, with a quote from Martha Nussbaum, who is also quite well known for her writings on ethics. And she says, "The enemies of compassion hold that we cannot build a truly wise concern for humanity on the basis of such a slippery and uneven motive. Impartial motives based on ideas of dignity and respect should take its place." So the first part of this quote, there's a challenge to the idea of compassion as an ethical principle. We'll unpack this some more. The friends of compassion reply that without building political morality on what we know and on what has deep roots in our childhood attachments, we will be left with a morality that will be empty of urgency. And she quotes Aristotle, a watery concern all around. It will be watery. Okay, so that's just an initial reference to sort of kick off the discussion. I hope you'll bear with me. This is called analytical philosophy, which is done it's been there in Western philosophy. It sort of took hold in the early part of the 20th century, we could say.
Could you put it in presentation mode?
Well, we could try, but my experience is that it never works with this, the Mac and projector relationship is not so friendly unless someone knows for sure how to do it. We can try, but I'm afraid to, because then it goes blank and then I have to... Is it too small? I hope you can see. Maybe I can enlarge slightly.
Maybe it's full screen on the full screen.
I'm saying that this is problematic. And let's see if we can make that smaller. Oh, okay. That's almost full screen. Good. Okay, so the first point that this author is making, compassion must ultimately reject impartiality. What is impartiality? What is meant by impartiality? Famously, one scholar named John Rawls from the 20th century wrote on this subject, and he gave the idea of what he called the veil of ignorance as what's called a thought experiment to think about ethics, about how to act in relation to others. And the basic experiment is you're covered by a kind of super veil such that you know absolutely nothing about your present condition. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Ki Jai. You don't know what gender you are. You don't know where you live. You don't know what race you are. You don't know what sort of income you have, if you have an income. You don't know. You don't know anything about your present condition. He's suggesting that from that position of ignorance is a good position from which then you can make ethical decisions. Because you're not going to make decisions favorable to yourself in the conditions that you know about yourself, because you don't know your condition. Do you sort of get what he's saying? Okay. This is also called the smart gambler's thesis. It's a kind of, you're gambling, you don't know, okay, let me make this choice. So the idea is and he's only speaking about human beings. So there's no discussion about ethics of animals here. That's kind of a different discussion, perhaps. All human beings are positioned equally in their, he calls original position. We have a different understanding, perhaps, of original position, yes? Anyway, this is all a thought experiment. So the theory of this kind of impartial ethics is that it leads to justice. It leads to fairness. And that's what we want, right? We want justice in our society. We want fairness. And so this argument is given. And this is said to be the bedrock, the very foundation of a whole range of ethical thought, especially that of Immanuel Kant. You've all heard of Immanuel Kant, yes? Yes, no, maybe. He's a very important philosopher of the 18th century in Europe. And utilitarian ethics. Have you ever heard this term before? Utilitarian. The basic idea of utilitarian ethics is the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. That's how you determine what to do and what not to do. And then it's also a basis for casuistic ethics. What is casuistic ethics? Don't worry, we won't test you on all of this. But it's a process of determining how to act based on specific cases in the past. It's something like case law, I believe, in the area of law. Okay, the original position, and I added this word apparently, erases all possible barriers to compassion within the human community. So this is still an argument from the impartialists, if you like, that actually compassion can flow when there is this impartiality. Yes, one could argue that, but it also erases the epistemological foundation. I know you all know what epistemological means. Epistemology means the subject of how you know something. How do you know what you know? That is the subject of epistemology. So the epistemological foundation, how we know anything, gets erased with respect to how we would base our compassion. Now, I know this is starting to get complicated, but try to bear with me. This impartiality means now I don't know anything about those whom I want to exercise or show compassion to, namely all humanity, according to this. Why is that a problem? Because compassion is based first on attending and understanding. It's having some sense of understanding those whom we want to show compassion to. And therefore, this ignorant compassion, yes, it can be unlimited. You can just say everyone is equal now, and therefore let the compassion flow. But it's going to be totally abstract. It's not going to be applicable to specific, real persons. And so it becomes a kind of general well-wishing without specific content. Okay. How are we doing so far with this? So far, so good. I'm quoting again Professor Bain. It is compassion, among other motivations, that prompts us to be interested in the well-being of others and of ourselves. And it is out of this interest that we posit, that we assume ideals such as impartial treatment and equal protection. Now, what's he saying here? He's saying the basis of impartiality is compassion. He's putting compassion below in the sense of more foundational. You want to be impartial? Why do you want to be impartial? Because you feel compassion. He goes on to say, we accept, theoretically I added, the equal treatment of all citizens on the political level, while still embracing many instances of preferential treatment on the ethical level. So he makes a distinction, politics, ethics. Equal treatment, yeah, great idea, politically. Ethically, we will be preferential. And this is where I think we come back to how Krishna acts. Krishna cares especially for his devotees, right? There is a sense in which an ethic of compassion is ultimately more impartial than the Rawlsian, John Rawls' original position, is what he's saying. Okay, so now come the challenges. There will be 3 of these challenges to the ethics of impartiality, raised by the ethic of compassion. Do you want to hear them? Some of you do, some of you don't. Some of you may be thinking, okay, but when is this all going to be over? I feel like I'm in a philosophy class now. Yes. I think it's good sometimes that we stretch our minds to this sort of reasoning. Okay, the first objection is questioning the possibility of impartiality. And the reason for this questioning is to recognize that we are fundamentally subjective beings. There's no reducing ourselves down to some kind of absolute objective way of thinking. And he points out that this is true in psychological terms, epistemological terms, and now comes another big word, phenomenological terms, and ethical perspectives. Phenomenology, super simply put, it's about experience. It's about what I actually experience. And so, we don't actually have access to some objective point of view. We are not, and we never will be, omniscient. However, we might add, there is someone who we know is omniscient. Right? Well, he even anticipates that. He says, even an omniscient being may be subjective. And to that we might say, hurrah. Indeed so, right? And then the point is made, if there is no objectivity, there is no impartiality. The two are interconnected. So, we are subjective, God is subjective, God may be omniscient, will never be omniscient. Objectivity, where is it? Therefore, where is this impartiality? So, no moral agent, that's us, can claim to have attained the goal of impartiality. Moral agent is ethics and morals talk of beings who have agency, which means they can be responsible, basically. Okay, second objection or challenge for the ethics of compassion position against ethics of impartiality. Okay? Is impartiality always desirable? Arguably not. And he gives an example. There are two children. They're drowning in a pool. One of them is your own child. And you can save only one child. Now this is typical ethics reasoning, as they'll set up some crazy situation and you're going, that's not possible. But the whole idea is to force us to think what we mean in terms of ethical action. So there's your child and there's someone else's child, and now you have to decide which one you're going to save. You're going to save one of them, and so he says, oh, all right, so you could decide, I'm going to be impartial. Where is a coin to flip? And while they're drowning, you go, anybody have a coin? And maybe while they're drowning, you get a coin and you flip the coin. Then the question becomes, what sort of a parent are you? So that's one issue. To prize impartiality over all else is to trivialize, to make trivial the ethical worthiness of our most important relationships. So this is, he says, the ethics of compassion is about value or recognizing important relationships. We are ethical beings because we are relational beings. Partialism honors the relationships that make us capable of doing ethics at all. Mm-hmm. Okay, someone may say, but partiality, what if you take it too far? You end up with selfishness. You end up with nepotism. You end up with clannishness, being interested only in your clan. And the response to this is yes. If we're talking about compassion, one thing that compassion, the impulse of compassion is to work hard to resist, to fight against selfishness. Okay, there's more that can be said about that, but we go on briefly to the third point, the third objection to the ethics of impartiality. An ethic of compassion achieves a greater degree of impartiality than its avowedly objectivist rivals do. You get more compassion, you get more impartiality based on compassion than those who reject compassion. A compassionate person, he explains, attempts to understand the other as much as possible, to identify with the other as closely as possible, and to see the world from the other's perspective to the greatest degree possible. And a compassionate person will do this consciously, will make a conscious effort to understand. So, I think that's, I had one more. Yeah, further. The impartiality proposed by Professor Rawls only addresses one kind of justice. Remember, impartiality looked very good for establishing justice and fairness. The problem is there are many kinds of justice, and one of them is distributive justice. This is the one which his ethics addresses very well, or seems to address very well. Distributive justice, distributive fairness. It means the justice about distributing goods to everyone equally. But there are other kinds of justice, especially rectificatory justice and compensatory justice. I don't know if there's a difference between these two. So there's a problem there, which this author expands on. So this impartiality erases and thereby trivializes important social differences. And he gives examples of differences in race, differences in gender, which have been the cause of so much injustice. So his point is just erasing the difference has the end effect of trivializing difference. In our philosophy, differences are celebrated. They're not erased. Yes, we are all the same in that we are all eternal servants of Krishna. Jivar Swarupohoy Krishna Nityadas. But beyond that, we celebrate difference. The spiritual world is full of variety. And so all of this brings us to appreciate, I would suggest, that we are very much about the ethics of compassion, and this ethics of compassion is exercised by the supreme compassionate person. And so if we come back to the situation in which about which we're reading, that Krishna is getting ready to go to Indraprastha because his plan is to kill Jarasandha. We understand there's more than just killing somebody who's giving him trouble. He has a greater purpose, and that purpose is based on his compassion. Of course, Krishna says in the Gita, maybe we can turn this off now, if I don't know if I just close this. Krishna famously says in the Gita, Tesham eva anukampartam aham agyana jamtama nashayan yatma vaso jnana dipena vasvata. What form does Krishna manifest compassion? Here in this case, he says it manifests in the form of knowledge, which I give, which illuminates. And he says, Tesham eva anukampartam, anukampa arta, out of a feeling of anukampa, which literally means ongoing shaking. He is shaking with care for those whom he has partiality for, namely the devotees, who of course have partiality for him. And so that relationship generates, or the combination of that relationship generates and invigorates the ethics of compassion and makes us happy whenever we hear Krishna is going to kill Jarasandha and so on. Good, so I think I've probably by now, if I haven't overwhelmed you with too much sort of abstract idea in the realm of ethics, in any case, I think it's a good idea if I stop now and see if any of you have any thoughts, reflections, or suggestions for how better to present this. Mahendra Prabhu is thinking.
Nothing to add.
Devashirari.
Oh. Hare Krishna, thank you Maharaj.
Hari.
Very thoughtful class that make us thinking about things. That I remember 30 years ago I was working, responsible for the administration in a home for retired old people, but the person in charge was thinking, yes, when they are dying, give them some liquor, give them some enjoyment till the end, and that was his form of compassion. So it seems to me that the last point you made, that Tesham Evanakampatam, that Krishna gives knowledge to the heart, and that's real compassion. So if we need a big amount of spiritual knowledge, it seems, to be able to compassion, see the broader picture and not just the moment.
Yes, good. Thank you. Well, I think this accords with what we were reading from this professor. That compassion is based on understanding. Of course, he's not going to what we would understand to be the real understanding, the deeper understanding of our spiritual identity. But this is precisely what is being also argued here. I think it's this. So, and it's interesting. What I found most interesting is that one, we being fundamentally subjective can never be absolutely objective, and we can never be omniscient. Actually, in the Jain tradition, the theory is that when you attain liberation, you also attain omniscience. But we might not agree with that. But we would say, yes, the Supreme Lord is certainly omniscient, and therefore and subjective. And his point is, even if there is, he's not arguing is there not God, but if there is God, he or she or it would likely be also subjective and therefore partial. So I found that quite interesting, even being omniscient. So if you would argue that impartiality is a position for ethical action, remember the experiment was you do this from a position of absolute ignorance, not of omniscience, of knowledge. So it's a kind of interesting understanding. But he's agreeing also that the notion of God being the supreme subject, we might say, is going to be partial and is going to be caring from that position, compassionate, with full knowledge. Yeah. Thank you. Is there a microphone? Yeah.
I had a reflection and also a question that when you were speaking of the ethics of compassion, and I was thinking, yes, of course we can use this ethic to understand Krishna's compassion, but I was also thinking of this ethics of compassion and how it works between interpersonal relationships between devotees. Not devotees versus the outside world, but even between devotees. And this aspect of impartiality and partiality, because you spoke of how, towards the end, of how impartiality erases and trivializes the important social differences. And I was thinking how in the devotee community, we have a partial notion of what a devotee means and how a devotee should look and how a devotee should behave. And sometimes this kind of partiality then promotes this, this kind of impartiality that you have to be like this, maybe. That kind of, fades away the cultural nuances and differences that may be there, because ISKCON is such a worldwide institution and has
fades away what?
the different nuances in different cultures that devotees can bring.
Yeah.
So how should we understand this ethics of compassion, if at all, in interpersonal relationship between devotees?
Okay, I think in the context of what I was reading, that's interesting and important what you bring up, is the compassionate person is always resisting, always fighting against, he says, the tendency towards selfishness. And selfishness can be of a single person, or it can be a kind of collective selfishness as well. And so a tendency can also be there for devotees to get swept up in an unhealthy way in the notion of us versus them, or one group of devotees can get swept up in relation to another group of devotees. And so what I see is there's always a bit of there's a tension there, and just recognizing that our foundation point is of compassion, and we want to always, how to put it, when a body of water is still and the water is clear, then you can see down to the bottom of the lake, if it's very clear. So we're on the surface. We want to be able to see down to the bottom of the lake, and my analogy is to say we want to always see the impulse of compassion there, and then see within the complexities of there's multiple differences we want to see how to exercise that compassion. We want to make sure that compassion comes through. How it can come through is always going to be a matter of situation. And that's where we need to be ourselves Krishna conscious. Conscious that Krishna is the original compassionate person. And we need to be agents of Krishna's compassion. How is Krishna going to apply compassion? That can be an interesting question. Do you want to respond to this?
No, I would like to have a small question.
Oh. Is that okay? It's a big...
Could we think that that aspect of Krishna reciprocates according to your intention? Could we consider that statement as a reconciliation for his subjectivity? And
Ye yatamam prapadyante tam sataiva vajayaham. Krishna will reciprocate our intention, yes, and he may also surprise us and have some purpose of his own that we may not be aware of, but which, responding to our surrender to him, is giving us some lesson if we are open to it, and that may unfold in unpredictable ways.
And that would be his compassion to
Yeah, yes. Okay. Mataji here. Oh. Yes.
My question is, we spoke about compassion and you spoke about impartiality, but what about being judgmental? Because it seems like compassion takes an effort, conscious effort to try to understand the other person. An impartial person thinks there is only objectivity, but when we think we understand someone, we can be judgmental, we see the differences. But this doesn't make us compassionate. Somehow compassion makes life more complicated.
Compassion makes life more complicated.
Makes relationships more challenging.
Yes, indeed. Of course, interesting point you make. Yes, that's a whole nother session, I think. What do we do with our being judgmental? We want to hold back judgment. We generally understand being judgmental is somehow different from making judgment, which sometimes we have to make judgment. Being judgmental tends to mean, always looking down on someone, mentally condemning someone, perhaps. So it is something that we want to be very, very careful about, certainly. I remember recently I heard Swami Bhagavan Keshava Maharaj was telling, maybe he told about here, a friend of his attended one of these Vipassana practices where for 10 days you practice total silence. So his friend had just had this practice, 10 days total silence, and this was after that. And he asked his friend, so what was your experience? How was it? What did you experience? And his friend said, I realized how utterly judgmental I am, because you didn't hear a word from anyone else there, but I was seeing other people, and based on what I saw only, I was mentally judging them in so many ways, picturing, imagining, who I think they are and what they're about. and so on. So he said he actually learned something good, that, oh my God, I'm so judgmental. So I think that what we want is the recognition of our tendency, and then based on that, exploring or developing a culture within ourselves of, could it be the case, could it be otherwise than my judgment? Could it be the opposite of my judgment of this person? Sort of keeping ourselves open. Yes, I'm being judgmental, I'm judging the person in this way, and based on that I'm acting maybe, hopefully, compassionately, maybe not. But could I leave open within me the possibility that my judgment is wrong? Does that get at your point? Good. Okay, on that note, yes, one more microphone.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful class. I'm just trying to formulate the question correctly. In the original example of the thought experiment you gave, it sounded to me a little bit like a kind of almost impersonalist philosophy, in the sense that if you give up quality and you see others without quality, then you're able to be more compassionate because you're dealing with everyone in a sense as equal. But I was wondering, in terms of this framework, how would you present Krishna's compassion in killing Jarasandha? I know in that second point you raised, you said that because of Krishna's omniscience, he can act from a completely compassionate perspective, or at like an ultimate level of compassion. Mm-hmm. But how would you, in this context, explain Krishna's compassion in killing someone like Jarasandha?
Well, it's a little bit like explaining to someone things like Krishna has 16,000 wives. It's like, first we have to back up and explain a lot more before we get to that point. And therefore we see in so much of Srila Prabhupada's preaching to guests, he would hammer on one point, we are not this body. And when the person would try to go in one or another direction, he would always say, that's all right, but first you have to understand. So I think that is also relevant here. Now you could take that as a kind of cop-out and say, well, that's easy to say. But yes, I think you'd want to start, well, you could go from two directions. You could go from the theological direction of what do we mean by God, and God being all-powerful, being all-knowing, Sarvagya, and Sarva, what is all-knowing, all-powerful, and so on. Or you could go from the story, from the context of what's happening, what has happened, why does Krishna appear. You could also maybe start with the idea of avatara. And you could start from any points. You could start from Krishna saying, Kalosmi lokakshaya krit pravidha. I am time, destroyer of the worlds, and so on. He's destroying the worlds. Here he's just destroying one person in preparation. Avatar, yeah. I think an interesting thing about today's verse is the sort of description of the details, the kind of mundane things. He's getting ready to travel, and they have to pack their luggage, and he has to, get all the wives and their sons and everybody ready, and then he's going to get on his chariot. Krishna's all powerful, so if he wanted, he could just disappear from Dwarka and appear in Indraprastha. But no, he doesn't. He's acting as if he's an ordinary person, aside from the fact that 16,000 wives and 160,000 sons are coming with him. Of course, another thing that comes again and again when we talk about Krishna's Leela is that it's Leela. And that's, of course, in itself a challenge. What do we mean by Leela, and how is it different? Recently, I co-taught a course online for the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies, an introduction to the Bhagavatam with Radhadesh Prabhu, and there's an online email forum so the students can ask questions. And in the forum, although we in our recorded lectures said nothing about Vastraharan and Leela, Krishna's stealing of the clothes from the gopis, although we said nothing about it, someone brought it up in the forum, and it became, an issue which they didn't want to let go of. And it's very difficult because the students are coming from a variety of backgrounds, of what they've already heard and read and so on. And I was a bit, it went, how to say, it was a bit frustrating actually, how to deal with that. So, yeah, someone could similarly come on, but why does he kill Jaras? Okay, well, here we go. It's Leela, okay? Okay, no. Yeah. Our time, it's getting a bit late. One more question?
I was wondering about applying this, you were saying celebrating differences and applying it in our philosophy or in our lives as devotees, and sometimes we may tend to oversimplify, okay, everyone's devotee, and forget about varnashram or forget about genders or types of things. So is this like Prabhu was saying, impersonalism, and is this like an invitation to celebrate the differences and become knowledgeable in these differences, or am I taking it wrong? Your presentation on ethics and am I correct in putting it into the pro-personalism and differentiation? Is that how I understand celebrating the differences?
Yeah, we could say in some respects that's the case. Each one of us have a unique relationship with Krishna, we understand, and we want to appreciate that about others, that they have a unique relation. And yet, how do we bridge the gap if there's only difference, right? And so we have to be also a little careful not to jump to a conclusion, oh, that's impersonal. Someone is a manager and has to make decisions which may not always take into account all sorts of individuality. Well, you could accuse them of being impersonal, or you can understand, no, in this particular circumstance, in order to bring personalism to a wider audience, maybe we all agree on this, let's cooperate in this respect. So that's, of course, a balancing act. I think we never reject, I think it's important to be aware, we never reject the non-difference side. There's difference, there's non-difference, and our philosophy is achintya veda aveda. We don't reject one in favor of the other. Yeah, I think let's leave it at that. Thank you all so much, and I wish you a wonderful day today. Tomorrow, I believe, is Ekadashi, and tomorrow we're beginning our, maybe you want to say what's happening tomorrow, Kalakanta, starting tomorrow, the farm conference?
Yes, tomorrow we're having the 13th European Farm Conference. It's hosted in Radhadesh, and it's the first time since 2000 it's the first time that the full organization was done by the Radhadesh team, or the farm team. Until now, the ministry was proposing, interacting, marketing, and we felt that it was a time for the projects to own the conference. So it's here, and it's for 3 days. Tomorrow is the opening, and then there is many presentations and discussions and kirtans. So you're all very welcome. I was in touch with Ksetra Prabhu, and I was saying to you, a lovely opportunity for the community to take advantage of many speakers, devotees, farmers, to have a moment of like a Ista Gosti. I don't know, maybe on Thursday night, I don't know if that can be organized. Yeah, I'll see with the Ksetra Prabhu, because it's really nice when the community interacts with the conference and has some kind of understanding which remains in the community after the conference leaves. And many things can be understood, and I was until almost midnight with Tipo last night, and I was understanding his work here, and it's marvelous. I really think he's doing really good work. And it's in tune with the ministry timing, because now we're proposing that we should produce food. Okay, you're talking about now we should produce food. That's the chassis of the car. So we're here to celebrate the achievements of the different farms and to see what else we can advance. So you're all welcome. And Krishna Ksetra Swami is the leader in Europe, so I'm assisting him in this venture. I came from Brazil. So that's it.